Hafide Todosamsu, thank you for your participation in today's virtual public hearing. The Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Councils, Infrastructure and Public Transit, chaired by Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, and the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagat Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, to which I chair, will now convene the second Hale Comunidad Social Science Solutions to Drugs, Crime, and Other Problems, virtual joint informational roundtable. For the record, in accordance with the open government law, public hearing notices were given to all senators, stakeholders, and all media broadcasting outlets. The first notice was sent on Thursday, July 2nd, 2020, and the second notice was sent on Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. Today is Friday, July 10th, 2020, and the time is 2:02. Today's joint committee informational roundtable is the second of a four-part, or more if we squeeze in some more, four-part informational roundtable series that will discuss the deep roots of our island's many social problems with the hopes of developing more durable solutions. This series, titled Hale Comunidad, Social Science Solutions to Drugs, Crime, and Other Problems, started in February. And it was interrupted due to the pandemic sheltering in place. As we now have certain social or physical distinct protocols in place, Senator Pedo and I are excited to be reviving the Hale Comunidad informational roundtables again. The joint roundtable series, Hale Comunidad Social Science Solutions to Drugs, Crime, and Other Problems, is focused on facilitating dialogue between elected leaders, public safety professionals, subject matter experts, and community members to learn and share their recommendations and perspectives about the complex histories and realities of our community's many deep-rooted social problems that our island faces. This second informational roundtable will focus on the role of the arts, culture, and the humanities in empowering the community so that we can tackle problems such as drugs, crime, and other problems. And ask participants questions like, what programs currently exist in the community that are instilling into the youth important values that can help ensure that they become active and productive members of our island society? What new models can we draw from? Not just from within our island or the United States, but looking elsewhere, maybe from other indigenous communities, including Pacific Island communities, to help reduce social problems by providing youth a grounded place in the community. Confirmed attendees are Acting Director of the Guam Council of the Arts and Humanities Agency, Gillette Guerrero, and her main staff, Jackie Balbus, who was Acting Director for a long period of time, so we appreciate her attendance as well. We also have member of E-Commission Ifino Tomorrow, Dr. Laura Souter, Master of Tomorrow Dance, Vince Regis. We have Alex Gagarin, I think Alejandro is his first name, performing artist and a Tomorrow dance leader with in non-Gefpagu. We also have Samantha Taitano, Executive Director of Manyetlu, which is formerly the Big Brothers and Sisters program. They will provide their professional and scholarly framework for conceptualizing the roots of many of the social problems we face on Guam and how we can get to use that knowledge to develop more effective solutions. Joining me is Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, who, as I mentioned, is chair of the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure and Public Transit, and also is the vice chair for self-determination on my committee. Seduas Maasi for your virtual attendance to this afternoon's virtual informational roundtable. The theme for this joint informational roundtable is how can programs focused on promoting art, culture, and the humanities be helpful in addressing social problems that our community faces? What programs exist in our community at present? And what models are there out there that we can learn from, that leaders need to be aware of and do their best to provide support for? So thank you all again so much for joining me. And before we proceed further, there are some general rules of conduct for all participants of this virtual informational roundtable. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. All participants must abide by rules of conduct and quality assurance standards, including broadcasting from a quiet room with little to no interruptions. The use of virtual backgrounds is not permitted. Broadcasting from a room with adequate lighting, specifically to ensure that a participant's face is not backlit but visible at all times when speaking. Please ensure that you are unmuted and that you are speaking clearly into the microphone when it is your turn to speak. Presenters are asked to confine their initial presentations within a 10-minute time period. The joint chairs will recognize individuals to speak on the discussions at hand. If you wish to speak, please raise or motion your hand to be recognized, or let one of my staff know in the chat and we can accommodate you. Since we are allowed up to 5 p.m. to complete the second of our 4 informational roundtables, keeping in mind we might tack on a couple to that 4th, the Joint Committee will hear the presentations from the panelists first, and then proceed to open discussion and questions. So, the impetus of this roundtable series came from the experiences that both Senator Pedo and myself have had over the past year and a half. We've been attending public hearings and roundtables and community forums. We have heard the community talk about the need for change, the need for dramatic and real improvements in our public safety systems, and we take those pleas seriously. We have also heard from police officers, social workers, and other professionals that work on the front lines, dealing with the many social ills we face. One consistent theme from these professionals is that Guam's issues involving the committing of crimes, the safety of our community, our high rates of drug abuse and the like, that they are complex and they're not easily solved, that they have deep roots within family and the community. And what the courts, the safety officers and others are asking for actively in almost every hearing where they're in attendance is not Band-Aid solutions, not just strong words, but rather real support from their elected leaders and from their government in joining and supporting the paradigm shift that has been happening. That shift has been going from focusing largely on punitive measures to one where they're seeing much more success in prevention and in lowering rates of recidivism, meaning repeat offenders. And that is through a variety of diversion, therapeutic, and other programs that can help individuals in our community, the families, and just larger groups like neighborhoods at large get to the roots of these issues. And it's actually just more effective and more cost effective as well to tackle it this way, where we're getting to the roots and trying to prevent or it from happening in the first place or prevent repeat offenders. When I talk to the Manumco, they often remark that the island has changed. They don't recall so many of the problems that we have today. In our first roundtable, we had talked about how has our island come to this? How did we end up here? And that is still available on YouTube. It's a valuable resource. We heard from historians and others about their studies in the rapid changes to our island, where any society with rapid changes like that would be dealing with issues like we are. One persistent theme in our first roundtable and also from the community is that there has been dramatic changes to our island in demographics, in our lifestyles, and in our culture. People point to some of the biggest changes during this time are the challenges to the culture, the challenges to perpetuating and carrying out our values, and the loss of connection to the land. When we talk like this, we are not talking about just some of the symbolism, which is important. The symbolism like wearing particular types of shell jewelry, continuing to eat some of our local cuisine. But we are talking about the need to find spaces and ways to be carrying out a set of practices and values that connect people to their lands, that connect people to the environment, and connect them to one another. Culture is about values, it is about relationships, and it is a critical way that we navigate our lives. We are seeing an increasing trend around the world that recognizes this reality, that addressing social problems effectively does not only mean attending to the problems, but to reaching out to people, especially young people early in life, to give them positive role models, to teach them positive values that will hopefully stay with them as they get older. One of the things that they talked about in the first roundtable was people are looking for something that helps them be a meaningful contributor to the community from which they can pull value from. So one way I'd like to approach this is to talk about the health of the body. Social problems are a little bit like a sickness or an illness to our community. When we feel poorly, we go to the doctor when it's our body. And so when we look at this in a social way in our community, we need to find ways to make our community healthy. So things that we might do when we're feeling poorly, the doctor might tell us, you know, get your exercise, eat healthily, and then you'll feel better over time. When we think about our community in that kind of a way and the health of it, we are talking about the need to provide healthy nourishment for our community and have instances where we can exercise practicing out our cultural values. In the first roundtable, I introduced an old Chamorro proverb, and I had to, you know, this was in person, so I could lean more heavily on Sinadot Pedo to help me in the pronunciation. Tadza peneket sin fegai, or there are no footsteps without footprints. Since our first session focused on what structural issues have contributed to where we are today, that first one was meant to be really more of a reflection. For today's roundtable, I'm reminded of another Chamorro proverb, Angan untanam sempre doko. If you plant it, it will grow. If you plant the seeds, or all of us, island leaders, community participants in all forms that we have here today and others, if we are actively part of planting the seeds in the community, those seeds will grow. So we need to figure out how to plant those seeds of positive values, how to plant the seeds that will help our island youth grow up to be productive, respectful, and engaged citizens of our island. It is for this reason that Senator Pedo and I chose as the topic for our second roundtable is this Hale Comunidad Roundtable series, how can programs focused on promoting art, culture, and the humanities, which maybe a lot of people don't see the immediate connection to, how can those be helpful in addressing social problems? And that's the whole reason we would have a roundtable like this, is if we don't hear about these examples, if we don't understand those connections, we need to hear from people who can help us understand them and make those connections. And especially if those connections and those programs are the ones that are making a difference and making communities healthier. This second roundtable consists of people who have dedicated their lives to the arts, culture, and humanities of Guam in many ways. And I want to sincerely and deeply thank them for that and for joining us today. The role that they've taken for our community, it's not always an easy one, but as I said, they've dedicated their lives to it, and I will be eternally grateful for that kind of dedication that they've displayed and also carried out. We have Dr. Souter, who brings to this discussion a lifetime of working on community and cultural empowerment, working with the private sector and government agencies, such as departments of education, not just in Guam, but communities across the US and the Pacific. We have either through video or hopefully she will be able to join us in person as well, Gillette Guerrero, who has her own breadth of experience related to the arts and humanities and running nonprofits and agencies that help promote these things in our community. We have Vince Regis. He has dedicated his life to teaching Chamorro culture, arts, and dance, and sharing it with the world. In addition to showcasing Chamorro creativity, he has also developed curriculum on culture that is used in our public schools to help prepare the youth to represent our island in the tourism industry and perhaps even more importantly, to each other. We also have Samantha Taitano. She is here to share the exciting work of Manyetlu. In particular, their Art in the Village program, which I believe is up and running right now or just about to. It's very much in line with our discussion today. The participants will be given 10 minutes in order to lay out a general overview of how, given their experiences, how important art, culture, and the humanities are in addressing the social problems our island faces. They can share their direct experiences on certain projects, but also speak to the wider issues of how to approach helping our community with arts and culture in mind. After that, Senator Pedo and I will ask questions and open the roundtable up for a general discussion amongst the participants. So we'll listen to the presentations in this order. We will start with Dr. Laura Souter. We will then listen to Vince Regis. We will then hear from, I believe it's a personal testimony, and I think those are so powerful, Alex Gagarin. And then we will hear from Samantha Taitano, to be followed by a video presentation from Gillette Guerrero. So with that, I would like to have us go ahead and start with Dr. Laura Souter, member of E-Commission Ifino Chamorro and an authority in Chamorro culture. Dr. Souter, Laura Souter, if you would begin, it'll be a great honor.
Si Zeus maasi manana si Zeus hamzo todo. Magahit na imas importante na hali tauto gi comunidad, no? The strongest roots are the roots of people in the community because people make up community. I'd like to begin by just throwing out a very simple idea that everybody knows intuitively. And that idea is that when people feel good about themselves, when they have good self-esteem, when they have a good sense of self-worth, they're able to really communicate well together, collaborate well together, and serve the community well. You know, we tout the Chamorro value in Afa Maulik, but we don't always give it the full credit that it's due. And Inafa Maulik means that you have to be Maulik to create Maulik in a community, you know, because people who are strong, who are committed, who are connected, create community, and they help each other. Now, what am I talking about? 40 years ago, I delivered a paper at a social work conference entitled Psyche Under Siege. And I talked about the different social pathologies that characterize our community on Guam in that during that time, it was a largely Chamorro community with many Filipino immigrants and an increasing number of Micronesian island residents as well, some stateside community members. But by and large, it was still a majority Chamorro community at that time. And we talked about all of the psychological and social problems that we were experiencing. And we were trying to come to grips with what it was that wasn't working, what was breaking down, and how could we fix it. And a lot of the discussion that we centered on at that time dealt with our colonization and the residual colonization that still infiltrates in every way that we view ourselves as people. And we haven't really confronted the issue of colonization adequately on Guam to this date. It took a long time before we even began to talk of ourselves as a colony. And we began to talk about the impacts of colonization, what that does to the psyche of a people. Because social problems are rooted in the mind, in the way that people feel about themselves. So if we don't address that, then we're not going to be able to decolonize effectively and be able to, improve the psyche of the community. So that's where that discourse was located about 40 years ago. Sad to say, we still haven't really confronted the full impact of how our colonization experience, of how our colonial experience has impacted the way we view ourselves. Children still don't learn systematically how to speak Chamorro at the same time that they learn how to speak English in a mixed school curriculum. Our children still don't have a good sense of history, and that contributes to rootedness, if you will. We're making inroads, but we still haven't been successfully able to make it normal so that everything that we're doing is kind of incremental and as a kind of supplement, okay? We teach Chamorro in schools for 20 minutes a day. Who do you know that has learned how to speak Chamorro fluently taking Chamorro in classrooms 20 minutes a day? How can children feel good about themselves as they don't know about their history from the perspective of their own people, not history as written by people who came from the outside? So these are all considerations that we have to take seriously. Another thing that I'd like to share is this idea that somehow culture, the arts, when we're talking about these so-called soft disciplines, if you will, that they're important but not central to life. That art is not as important as public safety, that humanities are not as important as housing, that it's more important for people to know where their food is going to come from than where their spiritual nourishment exists, where that source exists. And I was trained as a sociologist, okay? We have it wrong if we think that we have to prioritize and pit, things like public safety and education and health against art and humanities and literature and so on and so forth. We have it wrong because the whole person is comprised of their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being, as well as their physical well-being. So if you take that equation, then 2/3 of our resources should be focused on the spiritual and the emotional well-being of people. And 1/3 of the resources should be spent on the physical well-being of people, if we really want to talk about balance and about priority. And this has always bothered me because when push comes to shove, okay, we've had COVID. COVID has devastated the world economy. All kinds of cuts are going to have to be made in the budgets, Okay, the senators are going to be considering budget decisions shortly, right? What gets cut? What gets cut is always that sort of not easily defined dimension of human existence, which talks about cultural identity, cultural strength, cultural self-worth. Children engage in acts which are not necessarily helpful to themselves, which may be criminal acts as well, if they don't feel good about themselves. So whatever we do, we have to understand that paying attention to the emotional and spiritual, psychological well-being of the person is as critical as finding them food and homes and shelter. Because that's the other side, often the hidden side, and sad to say, often the ignored side of the human equation. So very important as you make monetary decisions, as you decide what things to cut out of budgets, what things to fund, that we give full consideration to that, because I think that that's very important. We want to decrease crime. You decrease crime by increasing the well-being and the self-worth and the self-esteem of people. That's how you decrease crime. I mean, social sciences has demonstrated that to us amply. The idea that culture, especially in a time of crisis, I think crises give us an opportunity to really discover parts about ourselves that we sometimes get too busy and ignore. And what has been discovered in this time of crisis has been the human elements of, for example, family. People have found ways to reconnect with family in a way that they never connected with them when they were living close to each other, or when they could touch each other every day and give each other hugs every day. People are taking, are really taking stock of what's important. When we've had to sequester, when we've had to isolate, when we've had to quarantine, we all of a sudden discover the majesty of companionship, the majesty of family caring for each other, that kind of thing. So I think that this has allowed us to really, really unpack what's most important to us in our hearts, because I think that this time has given us an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves in very, very meaningful ways. What keeps me from worrying all night, right? What helps me to mitigate my anxiety? My class of 68 we're very closely knit, and we've celebrated several years ago. We celebrated our 50th our fifth, not anniversary, our 50th reunion as a class at the academy. And one of the ways that we've tried to nourish our spirits is we created a tomorrow class. So every Friday, this morning, I spent 2 hours with my classmates, those who could come, join us on Zoom. And we've been doing this every Friday since COVID hit. And we're having a wonderful time. We've just lost a classmate, and so we had to grieve on Zoom. Whoever thought you could grieve on Zoom? But we're able to cry and give each other virtual hugs and talk to each other in ways that we probably wouldn't have taken the time had we been normal, same old, go to church, go to the funeral, say hi, blow kisses, but never really talk to each other. We're able to share with each other. We're discovering the Chamorro language in a wonderful way. And so this is what I'm talking about. We have to whatever we do, let's not lose sight of the spirit. Let's not lose sight of what nourishes the spirit. Art, literature, the humanities nourish the spirit. And that's why they're so central. Do I still have a few minutes of time? I'd like to read a poem. This is a poem that I've seen. Actually, it's very popular on YouTube. Sammy and I love to look at YouTube and learn new things. And this poem keeps popping up. So I was curious about it and found out that it was written by Kitty O'Meara in Ireland in 1869. And she wrote it after the Irish potato famine. And it's been performed by all kinds of audiences across the world during this COVID pandemic, including in Africa, in Asia. Japanese musicians put it to song. So it's a very, very evocative poem of the human spirit and what matters. It's a poem entitled, "And People Stayed Home." And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, as they had been healed. Imagine a poem, 1869, still speaking to us as if it was written yesterday. That's what art does. That's what the humanities do. They bind people together across time, across centuries, across millennia. And they help people to understand what's really important. So whatever we do, senators, please, whatever decisions you make, you're very powerful folk in our community. You guide policy, you fund programs. Let's not forget about that dimension of our humanity, which informs all of our social interactions. Because when people are happy about themselves, they do good. And when they're unhappy, they not only cause harm to themselves, but they cause harm in their families and to other members of the community. Thank you.
Sizus Maasi, Dr. Sauder. That was a really important presentation to hear from. And, you know, I have read your Under Siege and I've referred to it many times. It's really important for us to look at the topics that you tackled there, the changes and the consequences that that add up to some of what we're facing. I do want to point out that we also have other senators that are here. So we're very pleased to have Senator Mary Camacho and Senator William Castro. So thank you for joining us as well. And I thought it was very appropriate to have some art, poetry, humanities, right, in this forum. They do speak to the power of, sometimes that's the way that reaches us the most. And some of what we may be talking about with CAHA is it's very exciting with their new grant cycle that's out. They are really showing us we appreciate art for beauty's sake, but there's something deep and powerful about art that people will respond to. And so in their grant cycle, with which both Jackie and Vince Regis are part of as well, that grant cycle is asking artists to help us remember and learn how to better social distance and carry out all the things we need to in this COVID-19 crisis to keep our community healthy. And so there can be direct impacts from culture when it's harnessed that way. So I just wanted to just call attention to that real quick. The next person that we're going to hear from is Mr. Vince Regis, Master of Contemporary Chamorro dance and instructor of Inetnangef Pagu, the cultural arts dance group. And as we mentioned earlier, his group has gone around the world representing Guahan, and it's been a beautiful thing to see. So, Sinzus Maasi for being here, Vince, and we look forward to your presentation.
Jesus Masi, Senadora, and Senor Miguel, for having me here and for inviting me. Saina, Laura, Sauder, Dispensa, I don't know if I can live up to what you just finished. I'll try my best. I'm at the end of the day, I'm just a teacher and just a son of Maleso trying to figure out and navigate our culture forward. And so I'm just going to just speak freely because when Miguel asked me to do it, I heard Roundtable, and so I didn't really prepare anything, but I'll try my best to just kind of sum up some of my thoughts regarding this. I've been an educator for 20 years. When I first started this, I just had a passion to perpetuate our culture. And because when I left off island for school, I realized that I was lost in my own identity. Even brought up down in the South, living down in Maleso, and being nurtured and raised in the heart of culture. And now it's so interesting. It's so funny because, or not funny, but it's a little. I'm worried a little bit because I find myself reminiscing to the way things were when I was growing up, and I couldn't help but feel the need and wonder what our students are defining themselves as, and our youth are defining themselves as Chamorros. And so when I left off island to school and I had that sense of break between what my identity is and what my perception of Chamorro-ness is, I wanted to come back to Guam and figure out and be a part of the cause. When I first started, I didn't really have a platform. I was jumping from everywhere, from just working at Laddie Magazine to helping out at Sanctuary and doing some basic Chamorro steps or whatever it is. And God has blessed me in 2000, because it's been 20 years since then, to have given myself a medium and a platform in which to express that identity. But more so, when it first started, it was to help the students find that identity. Now it's learning, it's allowing them to not just find that identity and what defines them as Chamorros, but how do we move it forward? And also to become the best version of themselves or to better our community. So although in the beginning it was about, let's teach them the culture and let's just continue to keep it relevant to them, to now saying, okay, how do I use culture and the arts and performance to make them feel the best they possibly can feel about themselves, and to break the layers of these insecurities down a little bit more. So I focus a lot on empowerment, and I focus a lot on finding what works for them, making culture, I say 3 R's: relevant, reachable, and relatable. And in whatever way that looks like to them, how do I mold and give them the tools they need to move it forward? And so, for example, even through this whole COVID pandemic, we have been busy. Like, we're doing the Nanlala concert tomorrow. We just released a single. We are working on putting a video together. We're doing a mural. There's so many projects that we're still doing, but we're finding a way to continue doing what we love. At Southern High right now, we're creating what we call a pocket academy, which transitions the students from learning basic dance and theater to move into school to work programs where they can actually transition into the tourism industry using the knowledge of culture. And Alex will talk a little bit about how that has helped him, because he works as the lead captain for Tato Tasi. But the arts for me have always just been, Dr. Sarter was completely right when she mentioned the art is just as important as a lot of the other important things that are happening in our island. But the arts, I think, is the balance. It is the balance of the soul. When we're upset, where do we turn to? When I turn to music. When I want to pray, where do I pray? I pray through music. Music speaks to me. When I want to be awed and inspired, I watch a TV show, or I go out and I look at nature and I see, and I'm grateful for everything that I've done in this road. But at the end, my goal has always been to be able to allow our students and our youth to be able to feel the greatness that they are, and it's through the arts that I'm able to do that. We traveled to 27 countries around the world promoting and perpetuating our culture. I didn't even realize that much until I went back and I counted it. And I realized that out of 27 countries, we get the privilege to share our culture and the responsibility to share our culture to the world. Because when I first started traveling, it's saying, of course, the kids, and Alex would say they just wanted to go on the trip. But my agenda was, if we give the world to our kids, then they come back thinking worldly. And when they think worldly, then they make worldly decisions. So that we take these people, these students, and these kids who are at risk. And typically, and Alex will agree, a lot of at-risk students come to me. Why? Is because they may not excel in what is defined as success in the traditional education system. They may not do well in math or social studies, or they may not do well in extracurricular activities. But give them a stick and give them a chance, they'll be out there with all their might, and they're the most proudest person. And we've shared many success stories where many of these students who would go and just try to sell banana to raise money to buy a polo shirt, but when they put on that polo shirt, that sense of pride that they have in them goes a long way in their decision making and in their future. So aside from all of the accolades, at the heart and the core of why I do what I do is I just love our culture, I love our island, and I want to ensure and impact and empower our students to take this value and not look at it as it's dying, because everyone keeps saying it's dying. When we say something is dying, it's going to die. But we say, yes, it's in critical condition. Now, what can we do to take it out of critical condition? And how do we give them the tools they need to do so? So again, keeping culture relevant, reachable, and relatable. Once we get that in, and where it resonates, because if how do we get it relevant to them? How do we use the language to speak to them? Everybody wants to learn the language, but why? What's the layers that they need to get through in order to do it? I'm just grateful that through the arts, I'm able to do that. I'm able to throw them a chant, throw them a dance, throw them something, and it forces that on that language. Take them off island and force them to speak the language. So I call it forcing the identity crisis as well. So, I know I don't have much time, but I just wanted to share that that's what I believe about the arts, is that it's not really about the arts, it's about the impact arts make on an individual who has things in them that they need to express, that they're not able to express. So I'm going to ask Alex Gagrin. He's 26, I think, right? Fanan, Alex, 26, and he's been dancing since he was 12 years old, and he is what we call one of the Magalahis of Inetnungepagu. He is now the team captain over at the beach bar and continues to perpetuate our culture in his own way. So, Patin, if you want to share a little bit.
Howdy, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Alrighty. Me personally, it started off as just an ordinary class in middle school in IMS when Rages was still there. And it really, me personally, on my adventure of finding my identity and finding like who I am as a Chamorro, and how can I help my community. It was really when we first went off island. Went off island, did exchange in Japan, my 7th year, and it was just life-changing to me because everyone was so interested, everyone asking questions about Guam, and then yet all we can say is like we're just a small island. And so as I continued and I grew up basically with Inenengepagu, my identity has shifted quickly. I started learning little by little every day. I still learn little Chamorro phrases every now and then. And then also too, when I hit Europe, that was when the big culture shock. It's like we're the only ones with the US to speak English, and I was like, man, dude, it's crazy. Like, went back home and I was like, I need to learn and all this. And also too, After my slowly ventures of Inanagapagu started trickling down because I came early father, I started venturing out into getting, what the family needs to provide. So I started down at Gun Beach. I started as a regular dancer, and then I actually filled up my spot as a head captain because me knowing a lot about the Chamorro culture and a lot about our community, I let my managers know, and I put it out there, like, it's not all about having the nicest costumes and having like the prettiest girls, the buffest guys. It's all about how you perpetuate yourself and how you put yourself out there. And if you're doing the right stories and the right chants, like, then our message has got way beyond from what they originally know now. My venture right now, it's a struggle because a lot of people look at me as like, oh, you're a mix, you're half. I was like, and what? I I identify myself as strong Filipino because both, if without them I wouldn't be here. And a lot of people has come up to me, and a lot of people has reached out to me recently after throughout this whole COVID things, the COVID-19. Like, I'm getting people like, I'm finding out like a couple of my neighbors and also like my childhood friends who are like struggling and just thinking of like taking the easy way out. I'm just like, no, it's like it's so, um there's no easy way out. You can't accept the fact that if you think you can't learn tomorrow, then you've already given up on yourself. Our culture is never gonna die. That's up to us. It's really up to us down in the deep end. So we need to wake up now. We need to get up, you know, get outside. Either you need to cut the grass or whatnot. Sit down with your grandparents, sit down with your aunties, uncles, and just ask them, teach you little by little every day. That really doesn't hurt. As I'm yeah, and it's like this. Ray just asked me, he's like, oh, to do this yesterday. I was like, yeah, I can do this. He's like, oh, just telling your personal experience and how Inanagapagu made you grow up. I was like, too easy. Inanagapagu has never given up on me, just like how I'm not giving up on my culture. You know, I started Sheraton, and then started now in my Gun Beach, heading um, leading a bunch of boys and girls to fulfill their passions. Like, if you want to be a dancer, if you want to be the greatest dancer, it's all about practice. Practice makes perfect. And that's what I tell everyone when I go to Southern High, or if I just meet up with Inanige Pagu at Chamorro Village performances, because I like to go to dig deep in my roots, because that's where it all started, Chamorro Village. And that's where my venture began. It's like the stomping grounds, Chamorro Village, every Wednesday. And
Well, thank you, Alex, for sharing that. I always use the analogy whenever someone asks me, why do you take the kids off island all the time? I said, it's because for me, the analogy is that one boy who goes to the basketball court in Malolo and has 10 boys they're playing basketball with, suddenly goes off island to Europe, comes back with that knowledge and experiences back to that same basketball court and talks about that experience. And that person is Alex. He lives right next to the basketball court. So, and so that trickles to everybody else. But see, when our students are, when our youth feel they are worth more than they think, then they start acting. And it's through the arts, through culture, through performance, through dance, through song, whatever it is, that's what I use to reach them. So, Jesus Maasi, I think we are past our time. I'm sorry we took a little bit longer, but again, Jesus Maasi.
No, I guess I could have told you could have had 20 minutes, but so you're good. You're good. But I appreciate your conscientiousness, and then hopefully we'll have time for some questions later, and then we can ask you some questions. So some of the things that you guys said really stood out. And so Vince, what you were saying about, arts, maybe people think of it as just the art for art's sake and they appreciate it. But what you were saying is how it impacts people as individuals. And that's that powerful impact. I know so many of your dancers, their lives have been turned around, or they have reconnected to the culture of the land, the village, their family, whatever it is, and for them, and it's made powerful changes for them. I've seen them when they refer to you, and it's just a powerful, you can see that powerful just connection that they have to you, and that they're so grateful for what you've given them in their life. And then from Alex, to hear from him that it provides many things. It's given you a job, it's given you employment, it's given you some leadership positions, and it's giving you that ability to talk to others. And that really reminded me of a term that I had used, which is cultural warriors. That it seems to me when people are just moved and impacted in the way that Vince has done for so many, and many of these other programs, they become really kind of these cultural warriors that through that strength of self-identity or power that they're feeling in that deep connectedness to who they are as a person, their culture and life ways and values, that they go out there just like Alex. And we have high rates of suicide in our island, which is really hard to deal with. We have nearly every week somebody who's contemplating this, and the more cultural warriors we have out there along with others that are encouraging them and inspiring them and saving them, just the better. It better it is for all of us. So before I get too caught up in that, sorry, I'm getting a little too caught up in that. Let me actually go ahead and move on to the next person that we have in our lineup. So the next person that we have in our lineup is Samantha Taitano. I'm very excited to hear about your Art in the Village project. She's the Executive Director of Manyetlu, formerly known as Big Brothers and Sisters. Sejus Masi for coming and sharing your program with us.
Yes, I'm happy to be here, and thank you so much for having me today. And thank you, Dr. Sauter, Vince, and Alex for kind of really sharing these powerful stories and bringing up excellent points about how art is so therapeutic and so necessary, especially right now when people are dealing with, the pandemic and different crises that may be happening in their lives. So the program that Manyetlu has, so we're formerly Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Guam, and our mission is really to empower and educate youth and families, to improve their lives for the better. I do have some pictures that I did want to show, just so you didn't have to stare at me the whole time, but so that you could kind of really connect to the program that we have put together. So if someone could put up, if Victor could put up my photos whenever that happens. But what we've been doing is a program called Art in the Ville. And, yes, okay. So Art in the Ville, so you may have seen this. This is our little mini exhibit from our 2019 workshop series. So we received a grant from CAHA. So shout out to CAHA and Jackie for being here right now. They've supported us through this entire program. And what it really is bringing art workshops to underserved communities where a lot of the youth do not have access to kind of take advantage of extracurricular activities that would require some form of payment, or even being able to stay after school because they wouldn't have transportation home. So we do this through street art, spoken word, photography, and cultural dance. So you can just switch to the next slide. So street art. So what we've done is, so this whole slideshow is just going to be some photos to kind of highlight some of the work that the kids have done in the community. And so for street art, for all of our workshops, actually, we've partnered up with professionals to facilitate this. And so Opaque has been the one who has been facilitating art workshops for us. And part of kind of having these people who have done so well in their individual industries come out is to kind of have them have access to these positive role models and have these positive mentors who are teaching them the skills to express themselves. With street art, the nice thing is that we create murals in each of the communities, really promoting community stewardship. So they not only get to kind of express themselves, but they get to really value their community because they're creating these murals, or they're creating murals on their bus stops and walls. You can switch to the next slide, please. So spoken word. So this has been really one of the most powerful workshops that we've been holding. And our last year, it was Life in the Ville was our theme. And it was really about trying to get the kids to express, what are some of the issues that they're facing in their community, and kind of, having them create pieces to talk about that, and really giving them an outlet to kind of share with us so that we can better understand what issues they're going through, so that we can also sort of cater our programs to kind of address those issues and help them where they need to be helped. A lot of the times you see programs being put out because people think that this is what is needed in the community, but kind of through these workshops, through spoken word, we get to hear from them in a creative way. It's not just a survey, it's not just an assessment saying, what are the issues? It's having them express themselves through the art to show us what the issues that they are facing and how they're coping with it. You can go to the next slide, please. So another program or another workshop that we have is photography. And so all of these workshops we hold in some of the public housing areas. The one on the top left is actually at the Humanities apartments in Carmen. And then we've also partnered with the DYA. So we do our art workshops in the correctional facility, at the community centers, and then also with some of the youth that are residing at cottage homes. So again, it's just another way for these kids to kind of express themselves. And especially with photography, when we held our art show, it was amazing. It was an amazing art show. It was at the Guam Museum. And one of the best things about it was we brought all of the kids there, and then just having them see their art displayed professionally, it was very life-changing. It made them feel like, oh my gosh, these are the things that I've done, and it made them very proud of what they did. And another thing during the art show was they were all able to sell their pieces, and they all got the money from the pieces that they sold. So it was also showing them that if you have the passion for this can also be a career. So next slide, please. So the last thing that we've done was we started to, this was actually implemented in the 2020 grant, was we started to have cultural dance. So just another way for kids to, as Vince was talking about, is really connect to their culture, to their roots through the arts. So yes, that's kind of all for the slides. But yeah, so, I mean, through everything, it's just been really amazing to see how the kids have kind of responded to it, and how they're looking for things to do. We're working in these communities where a lot of times the kids don't have extra things to do at after school, and they're craving for something, and if you kind of give them these sorts of programs, not only can they express themselves, but they're also they're not just kind of hanging out in the corner with their friends, sometimes getting themselves in trouble. So yeah, I mean, I believe that, you know, as everyone has kind of, you know, said earlier, is art is so therapeutic. It helps you connect to yourself. It helps you, you know, identify with yourself, you know, those values. And, you know, especially with these workshops, it's been so nice to have really positive role models for these kids, because that's a lot of the times what they need, is they need that positive adult to kind of guide them, to say, hey, you know, when I was a kid, like, you know, these are some of the things that I got myself into, and art is why I've gotten out of those sorts of situations. And a lot of the facilitators and the teachers that we have right now doing that can talk to the kids on that level, which has been really, really nice. So, you know, unfortunately, you know, it's always on a grant by grant basis, but like having something sustainable like this in the community, village wide, would be wonderful. You know, you're inspiring the kids to think beyond, you know, day-to-day things. A lot of the times, so we also do workforce development programs with the kids, and a lot of the times when we first ask them, what do you want to do when you grow up, they say, oh, I just want to work at a store, and things like that. And that's just because that's all they see. So if you can kind of show them beyond that, especially in the arts, you can show them, hey, like, look at, you sold your artwork. People like what you're making. Like, if you continue to put effort into this, this can be something that you make a career out of. And, you know, and inspiring the kids and empowering them to start thinking that way is really going to impact and make changes for the future. Thank you.
I just want to say from your presentation, and the visuals were very good. I think they really help us connect to the program and see firsthand the kids and the way that they're responding to those experiences. So there were a couple of things that I wrote down. Again, getting back to that idea of the fact that arts can be a form of a job or a career. And one of the things is, you know, I had kind of stumbled across this term, meaning that I hadn't said it correctly, but now I own it and like I meant it. And it's entrepreneur, right? You have the arts and you make an entrepreneur out of yourself. And we've seen such growth with that. You and others had mentioned the Wednesday night market, where we're actively going to the villages and their festivals. We're actively going to Wednesday night market. We're actively buying online or finding these artists to purchase from them. And that does so much. It does a lot for our tourist industry. It does a lot for our self-worth and self-identity, but it also creates this grassroots economy, this more circular economy where we're sharing the money amongst each other. We're passing it around amongst each other. And it goes a lot farther that way because it's circulating amongst us. It's not going off island, although of course we appreciate off island investment, but it operates a little bit differently when it does. And we're seeing right now, we're kind of vulnerable to some of our business that relies on outsiders coming here or outside things happening. So we can strengthen or re-envision or build upon our economy a little bit, even through the arts and the culture and the humanities with the books that we're writing and all of this. We're creating real industries. When you mentioned the spoken word, sorry, I shouldn't be asking you a question yet, but I just want to make sure I understand it. Was that like slam poetry that you guys are working on, or is that something else?
Yes, so they all kind of work through workshops to create pieces, and then during the art show, so last year we had an art show. We're not quite sure how we're going to do it this year, but last year there was a slam poetry contest at the art show, you know, and the winner, you know, got a prize, and, you know, just being able to kind of stand up there was an amazing experience. You know, it was the first time for a lot of them.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. You know, I'm not really much of a poetry person. I was very moved by Dr. Souders, and slam poetry really moves me. And I think, you know, that's so important in talking about the ways that art and humanities can impact people. A lot of us don't respond real well to textbooks and newspapers, and some of those kind of drier ways of passing on information. But if you do it through art, if you do it through slam poetry, you can get messages out to them about their own history or about issues that are important to them. But even myself, you know, there's only a certain amount I can absorb through some of the more traditional mediums. They are powerful mediums in that way. But again, I'm kind of getting too far ahead of myself when I should be introducing the next person. So the next presentation we're having is the video presentation from Gillette Leon Guerrero, the acting director of Guam Council on the Arts and Humanities Agency. And we're very lucky to have Jackie here so that if we have a question about CAHA and about what's discussed either in the video or just something that we'd like to ask, she's here to answer questions on behalf of CAHA. So just Masi, Jackie, for that. So if we can go ahead and start that video. Can someone check the sound? Can you hear the sound on your end, Victor? Because we cannot. Yeah, we're not hearing it. Can you go ahead and pause it or restart it? Yeah, maybe what we'll do, Victor, is start with some questions and then see if you can resolve the technical issues. So, yes, we'll go ahead and go back. And I realize that I've been the one talking, I feel like 98% of the time, so I apologize for that. I really want to hear from everybody. But let's go ahead and start with Senator Pedo to give everybody a break from me for a while. And then Senator Pedo can maybe ask a couple of questions, and then we can go to Senator Mary and Senator Will, who can ask one or two questions each, and then we'll go around a little bit.
Undang ko na si Jesus Masi, Senator Mars, and I want to congratulate si Samantha and to introduce si Vic Regis, Jan si Leandro, para turi mapresenta pa ako na dia manhunggizo na madalalaki kusumbi. Lo jang kita atan ini lalata gini ginay kita nota jang kita mandana se familiarta no. Wahana biya na stot baju sa manfinu English. Lo masya manujo na humano manujo pa Amerika manujo pa Philippines ja manalyam ja samoro manfinu samomura. Jat yutungu hafana taigwi hejo. Lo wahana stot baju ja wahana mentalojo gi conversation niya i familia. Hafana sigita mangentus pata praktika i costumbre, pata praktika i lingwahe, pata praktika i hinengi. Tanisisita man adana inaso. Na janginta praktika siya ifinota, gifinota moro, sempre famagonta man preciso man manungo pur finota moro. Lagwahan na biyahe na an mandana no, pure nesti manhobin no, man finu English story tempo. Lo sempia sa ezigi din ikunia. Ezigi din ang kulunia. Manahon man eskwela, anay muskekula jo tatizo hasa si Laura. Wasoa Laura ni manihita sa pananunggan muskelan jo now. Ja ti taza tabia sungi mugina tempulo prewit pago na estagaida tinados. Esta sungi lo si Laura maulik from no tomorrow. Maulik from no English. Gwawa ni dadang kuluzo taza na pininglisyo sinanaw dan sitatao. Eju benti na sina besangan na praktiko ju gifinut somoro sa ejigi dinang kuloko ejigi hiningungu ko siya gi manainaho ejigi na govzo na unay dangkulo na agradecimiento si Kelly ya kung bibidajo pues este topiko na nita diskuti por costumbre na Scotia lo tungwa na kung bidajo mas si Kelly este sa atmamu di pumulisman. Magradua jo University of Maryland, University of Guam, magradua jo gezi Drug Enforcement Academy giza Washington DC. The practical jo niezi pabay lang no suzung itiningo half-time manu patana para esti bineno gitanota. The esta usangannya i director i custom and quarantine nestigi tanisisita tatsogi. Tita nisisita sa lapi patana para sti bineno humano. Okuka ita nisisita ipatan adana zapata prepara muna hafa na klasin reglamento para tatsogi gini. Ejigi mas usangangani todo je magang enforcement, surveillance, and of course ejigi preciso. Lo todo sti i mambaba na amut i bineno ni manahalum gitanota. Umalum gini ni bakunari, umalum gini ni barko. Pwezangin man malagui patana paras ti bineno tanisisita ta pegay na sota watu gi barkunari ini manahalum, jan i barko ni manahalum. Ejigi na sina tanapara. Pues edza mas tiningaw i pabiaplika i tiningaw i hafa taimano patana para bineno sa kumutana paras ti bineno. Zangin taatan yung newspaper kara ugaan. Talili, we always see that the majority of the crimes that are being committed and the majority of the arrests that is being made by the Guam Police Department is mostly drug related. Pura drug related. Pues zangin na paras ti bineno, didi dia tagagagaw. Didi dia ginagagaw patana para sa dinistrosyo sa todo ifamagonta. Za ejigi na kada ratam mangwentus zan i custom ang quarantine sa estige na manahalum sa bineno. Dazangin ma-aplika todo itiningunia ni after manu para tasoda to counteract all these issues that are coming in as far as drug is concerned. It is custom that is responsible to make sure that you know the interdiction process and todo siya na programa tanisisita sumogi. Ja dangkulo na si Jesus masi hamdu torus Vince Reyes dangkulo hagulo kaya riandro utungan obino lo utungan ang tungo didi funut samoro. Ja todos hamdu dangkulo sa samanta utungan ang tungo funut samoro lo tihungu ko funut samoro lo dialo sa di pursi gayo gui na idad na neta praktika ifino English. Dangkulo na si Jesus masi. Kelly, thank you very much, Senator.
Senator. So I'll go ahead and what we'll do is we'll hear a question or two from Senator Mary and Senator Will. Then we'll give the video a try again so that we can hear some things about CAHA in case we have questions related to that. So Senator Mary.
Thank you very much. I never get tired of listening to all of you. And I think it's because I so deeply appreciate the efforts that you make in perpetuating our culture, but most importantly, understanding that culture is really the sense of place, the sense of person, the whole identity really is what gives us our self-worth. And we know that right now with our island being multiracial, a lot of outside influences, it's very difficult sometimes for the kids to grasp who in fact they are. But the what I was very interested in learning from today's roundtable is, while our efforts individually are limited to certain demographics, you, Vince, with your school, Dr. Sauter with the language promotion, Samantha with the Big Brothers effort, how do we then apply all those good lessons so that families can begin to practice those sorts of efforts? I mean, the bigger picture, and I see it also from the perspective of the court system and how they're, how they tend to rely on organizations to help them get families and people on track. But bigger question is, how do we then reinstill this on a grander level, so that, we all learned, Dr. Sauter, you read a poem that was written about staying at home. And, one of the things that we most value about COVID, notwithstanding the sacrifices, is that it's given us a reset on how to be a family again. But and I think that's a great starting point right now in this COVID area, to capture that while people understand what it's like to be together. How do we then take what you're doing, Samantha, what you're doing, Vince, Alejandro, what you found the value in what you do? How do we then bleed that so that families can take that aspect forward? That's the bigger question, because you're right. A happy person, it really is what we're after, and happy isn't necessarily being provided for. It comes from a sense of place. And we know that because, notwithstanding people who are well provided for, they still take their lives. They're unhappy. So I think we all know what needs to be done. The bigger question is, how do we then take that and make that the mantra and the MO of every parent, grandparent, auntie, uncle, community person, so that, it becomes then what we knew growing up. I mean, I was born in the 60s, or 1960, and we were raised by the community in those days. So I think that now we know what that's like again with COVID. How do we then take it forward? That's my takeaway. But I just want to end by saying that, please don't stop what you do, and I certainly won't stop listening to you, because I find you people fascinating and very motivating as well. Thank you.
Situs Maasi, Senadora. Those were really important observations, reflections, and I think some of our panelists will have some answers. So maybe, at least for this time, just to have some kind of order, if we start in the order we went through. So maybe Dr. Sauter, if you have any thoughts on what she shared and asked.
One of the things that has really become apparent through COVID, as you said, is this idea that we've reclaimed our sense of family, because we've been forced to physically be together, right? Or be separated from each other, and whichever course. But one of the things that is healing in community is the intergenerational connectedness that we experienced when we were young, where, when I was a teenager, I would go outside, and if I saw kids fighting, I would stop and say, explain to them that this was not a good thing, or ask them who their mother was. Pago, if ano tsogizo, sempre magalutizo, no? So that there's that sense of disconnectedness. There's also, people my age, hunggan Pedo, esta man gay edad hits, when we ask, when we talk, very often I'll hear people our age saying, "Totes tas tisinyo quintusi ifamagono sa timakoprepindizo." They not only do they not understand Chamorro, but they don't even understand what I'm saying, even if I try to speak English, because there's such a divide between grandparents and their grandchildren. And what I've discovered during COVID is that a lot of grandparents are asking their grandchildren to teach them how to use the media, the you know, the social media and the technology so that they can connect. And it's that's, I think, what we're discovering. And what I hear you saying, you'd like for us to really find ways of bringing it back to grow our sense of community is the interconnectedness between generations. You know, I really believe na man goflat si hit and I tafa si Rerex si famagunan man amangentus gifinut sa morud za timatungot but za man latsi, and then we correct them sa man mamahlaw pues esta timan malago man finut sa moro sa man maska nuhita mismo. You know, that's one of the things that we're learning in the Comisión Finot Zamoro. We're trying to create what we're calling welcoming nesting environments for passive bilinguals. Young Chamorros, middle-aged Chamorros, among you, many of you are senators who have said this to us, and government leaders and so on. Man mamalo hamzo man finot Zamoro sa bula linatsi. And we keep reminding everybody that hamilain okay and I man fifino ham and I mandiki ham bula linatsi. But we were immersed in an environment where edi linatsi siya tigof anok. It's very apparent now that if you try to speak Chamorro Zapadza ho, Pawaso ho, whatever you call it, Apling ho, it's very embarrassing, and then you withdraw into your hold. It's kalan duk no and sige maasli siyempre umalun sa tiumutsong. That's how people feel about speaking Chamorro, but that speaks to that connectedness. We have to create nurturing environments where we're allowed to make mistakes and correct our mistakes, and we can do that intergenerationally. So I think one of the challenges, Senator Mary, is to create ways that we can begin to heal the wounds that we've inflicted on each other. Because you know, hita mismo, iisauta mismo. So we push each other away from children. Children are. I mean, I've been at a table at Linda's where all the family members have their phones and the mother is saying, "What do you guys want?" And the kid is saying, "I already texted it to you." Can you imagine that kind of communication? But that's what we've evolved into. We don't speak with each other. We don't tell stories to each other. That's how we learn about history. That's how we learn language. So if we can introduce ways of not only just working with kids, Samantha, but working between kids and their grandparents and their parents and bringing communities together. That way, whether we do it in art, Vince, whether we do dance, that, you know, tisinya bumayla zo taigweno I unsotsugwi, no? Lo, you know what I'm saying? The chants, there's so much we can do together, but the way we fragmented our lives are so fragmented, we've lost the art of intergenerational strength. And I think that that's part of what you call for when you ask for what can we do to keep that going. I think we have to rediscover the strength in intergenerational communication.
If I may interject, I'm so glad you brought that up, because one observation I've also made during COVID is that people have nothing to do. They're just bored out of their skulls. And in you know, I've been feeding my family since the start of COVID, because we've been the babysitters for parents who have had to work throughout COVID. So every night is dinner for 12 to 14. Every night, it's insane. But what the point I'm getting at is that model of being now the nurturer, the role model, the person who then teaches them about food, about farming, about, you know, everything, gathering. If you can extend, I believe, what you're doing with the kids to the parents, and that's what I meant. How do you get it back to the parents? And the only way is if there's a participatory part, like parents can learn to make things, parents can just have a place to go that's free. I think then we can shepherd our people back into that intergenerational connectedness. So the dance, everything has to extend beyond. But thank you, Dr. Sada. That was exactly where I was hoping the discussion would go.
And I just wanted to put in there before I move it to have Vince answer the question as well, is I know that Commissioner tomorrow and a lot of what Dr. Sauter has done is education related. And so with my small experience of teaching Fatina Silati or Lati carving in the Chamorro Studies classes at some of the public schools and at the university, but what I've observed and the teachers have talked about is even in these Chamorro language classes, and I have my grandchildren from my oldest son, the mother is Filipina, and so even though they're Caucasian and Filipino and don't have Chamorro heritage for my grandchildren so far, they love their Chamorro classes. I think it too, even though they're not Chamorro, it gives them a sense of place here. It gives them a sense of understanding the community here. And so even though we have that larger island-wide sort of community, those aspects of the Chamorro culture and Chamorro lifeways, they've woven into it. And so even for them, it gives them a real sense of self. And I think it does really good things for them. I know they feel like they get a lot out of it. But when I taught those Lati carving classes, one of the things I really learned when I was researching it was that there are stone house posts throughout our region. It's in Ulithi and Wooley and Mogmog and Vice and places like that, which I did not grow up knowing. And so when they're there chanting, when they're in Chamorro classes, when they're there carving in Chamorro classes and doing weaving in Chamorro classes, it covers a whole range of connecting people together across the cultures, be they Filipino or Indonesian or Chukis or Pohnpeian. And even for me, I mean, I love weaving. I am not a good weaver, but I think it gives us a local sense of place, whether we're Chamorro or not, or it shows us ways that we're connected across cultures in our region, which can hopefully help some of those things. But for Vince, in addressing Senadora Mary's questions and points, I'm thinking that with your dance groups, and even in your teaching, that perhaps you also maybe have non-Chamorro students, and that maybe it radiates, some of the good that happens radiates to families beyond the students, but maybe their families as well. If you could speak to some of that.
Okay, si Zusma si Senadora Mary Torres. Nice to see you again. I just want to always publicly thank you. I mean, Senator Torres, I was a runner, I think, when I first got out of high school, and she was working with her husband, and she's seen me grow and supported me, and then she became GVB deputy director, which has helped and has been such an amazing support. So I always have to acknowledge her and all her efforts in helping us grow, and I hope I make you proud, because I coming from being a runner now to where I'm at, and Senator Terlaje man, sen and I will mukag if fuminot sa moro sen mahalang zo ni itatahu sen so who hasu itatahu and esamate si tatahu lo who hasu and sen mahalang if niya and if mizu. So I'm so happy to be able to hear it, because wait, hold on. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello? Hello. Okay, so I was very happy to hear this, because what I find myself missing is that conversation amongst our manuncle on the conversations that they have. One of the things everybody knows is I go home to my mom who lives in Arizona and it's the time when I sleep, and the reason why I sleep is because I'm surrounded by the comfort of my mom and their culture and their language and the depth of it. To answer Senator Torres's question, for me, how do we connect? First, the art is what's gonna draw the mass appeal, I think, us as artists. I mean, because we can relate to, we can create a story. When I create a story or a dance routine, or when I put out it's always a song, it's always about a reflection, and we have to be a reflection of what is happening with our culture. When we released Sengguaiza Haguan, I mean, our whole intention with creating that song was just to show our sense of mahalingness and how we felt about being an ambassador of the island. It resonated to so many people and reached 200 something thousand views on YouTube, because then it now became a way for and a song that many people are able to identify. And we just released another song out, and that new song was in response to COVID and this kind of transitional moments in someone's life. So for me, how do we reach is through the arts. When I was researching a dance we did about the comfort women, I spent my time with the Manamko. I spent my time with Tanloling Polino at Gefbog, when she would tell me about Dueñas and that she was there and she knew him and all of that stuff. And those are those moments that I will always cherish. How do we move ourselves forward is we need to find a medium between our two. That means ours are the Generation Z, Gen Zs, the Generation Xs, all of these guys are socially addicted. They're addicted to social media. And I think many of us, I don't know if I think I'm a Gen X. So Gen X are getting addicted. My mom was terrified about using the computer, about using the phone, but man, she's the fastest now on WhatsApp and she's sending those messages out. And I think we find ways to bridge that gap between us being so distant with being mamalo. Like I'm mamalo, sometimes sempre mamalo zuti tisini zupin sa moro sa gaya gisi Antilora, gaya gisi Senator Uncle Pedo. I send mamalo zu, and why is that so? It's because there's a deeper mamalo-ness. Reminds me of going back to my childhood days. And so when Antilora talks about shutting down and being the duk-duk, it's because we revert back to being that child. And so for us, my age, who I don't have kids, but who are the age who have kids and grandkids, we need to figure out ways to break that mamalo-ness down, right? And ways to make it comfortable for us to speak, to speak our language in front of our Manamko. Pedo Nadera said this one time, and it always resonated to me, and I always said it over and over again. In order to speak good tomorrow, you must speak bad tomorrow. When that light hit, I was like, oh my God, it gave me permission to speak bad tomorrow. And so when I realized that, that's when and then sempi pagu senior zu kementusi low to senior zu kentusi maulit if I'm in front of my mom or Auntie Laura or Uncle Pedo. Why? So we got to break those down, right? We got to find out what, and like Auntie Laura said, how do we resolve that? And then we find ways to connect with for me, the way I connect to the masses is one person at a time, one project at a time. When I get hit by a criticism or a comment, I use that internally to find a way so that I can heal within and put out something through the kids. And I put out something, and from a song to a chant, when my mom sees all the chanting, she doesn't get it. She thinks it's gepalang or babarias, right? But then I throw in the bailan butsu, bailan español, tinikling masaya hafa, gov zanyas and gov magov espiritunya. Especially when I break out anything in the 1960s with the twist and jitterbug. That's where she gets her groove on. But for me, how do we connect it is we find programs that bring us together and also pay attention to the movement of the society, of our culture. I don't think we need to, I think the phrase, instead of going backwards or finding what we used to do, it's how do we bring it forward? because going back may not be relevant to our students. They may think it's too far back. But if we say, bring it with us, take it with us, what are those things? Then we empower them to take it with us and move forward. So I think that's what I have to say. I'm going to plug my iPad in because I think it's going to die real quick. No,
yes, and we don't lose you. Alejandro, did you have anything that you wanted to say? And then we'll move on to Samantha. I know you have some programs, I believe that they're intergenerational. Alejandro?
Yeah. Going back to the whole intergenerational, having multiple nationalities in a group. Me personally, down at Gun Beach. Hello? Hello?
We hear you. Can you
yeah.
hear me? Okay, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, going back to all of that, like I deal with a lot. I deal with Chukis, I deal with Panapayan, Yapis, Marshallese too, and even also Filipino. And like when we're getting ready and like as they continue to trickle in, learn all the dances that they need to, I always instill like, hey, if you have any questions on the Chamorro segment that we have, you need to ask questions so I can let you know and understand. And it's because like we're not really different from the other islands. The only difference is that we should speak a different language. And also too, when I'm talking to the new generation of Inanigapagu, I say, hey, no matter how much you mess up, it's always another day. Practice makes perfect. If you need to learn a chant to understand it, because if it comes from here, if it comes from your head, then that's nothing. If it comes from your heart, it's a different story. And that's why I always keep like dancing and my art very close to me. Everything comes from the heart, and it's really up to you. If you want to let it just go through your head, go in one ear out the other, then by all means, we need to find another way just to have it instilled and have it work for you spending time on it, basically. I mean that's what I from my understanding from the question was.
Gulf Malik, Situas Masi for weighing in on that. It's important to hear. And yeah, something that's come across my mind, and maybe Manyalu would know this, like to what degree, sorry to build on your questions, Senadora, but what degree the other groups out there have art, cultural, and those sort of programs where they dance regularly or weave regularly. And I know Jackie from Kaha will be able to speak a little bit about the fact that they make it a point to address the wider island and not tomorrow through the Kaha programs. But Samantha, if you could talk about maybe some of the family or other programs that you have as well that have some intergenerational aspects.
Yes. So when we were kind of making the transition to Manyetlu from Big Brothers Big Sisters, one of the things that was kind of big, we used to be very focused, so empowering youth to change their lives. Now, mission includes families. One of the things learned is, we provide these programs at all levels. They do not have the system, it's sort of one step forward, two steps back kind of thing. So we do focus a lot on empowering the parents now as well. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you are breaking up a little bit sometimes, but we got the empowerment of the parents as well, so that's good to hear.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we try to focus a lot on empowering, especially those from the FSM, through educational and informational workshops, and that's all done through the Micronesian Resource Center one-stop shop. And then also pre-COVID, we do all of our weekly activities in different public housing areas. And what we do there is we encourage the parents to come out, and we have craft programs specific for the parents. So we've taught a lot of it's usually the moms that come out. We've taught a lot of the moms, crocheting and weaving, and we've been doing a lot of
You're
programs.
breaking up just a little bit again. I'm not sure why. Maybe if you step back a little, it helps. I'm not sure.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, it seems to be.
Okay. Yeah, so we also try to do these art programs with the parents, and we've been using, we've had them kind of create like plastic bag mats, and like these sort of like small craft projects are things that both the parents and the kids can do together when they come to our site activities. So it's really, our focus is we need to empower the parents and educate the parents. Maybe they're struggling in some sense in their life, and which is making it challenging for them to be a parent and to properly parent. Maybe they don't understand, what they, the scope of like what the parenting needs to be. So we also hold parenting workshops. So, it's also just kind of understanding the different communities that you're working with, the different families that you're working with, because they're all going to be different, but just, making sure that they're supported and empowered and have access to resources to kind of, holistically help the family.
Yeah, Gulf Malik, that sounds very good. And I believe a lot of your funding comes from the Department of Interior. Am I correct, or is that not correct?
Yes. Okay. So in Micronesian Resource
Are they
Center,
continuing to support you guys? That would be my hope. Is that as senators, we would definitely do what we could to continue to appeal to the Department of Interior to do so.
Yes, so the Micronesian Resource Center is fully funded by the Department of Interior. And then we also did receive CARES Act funding to kind of expand workforce development, and then also to expand making sure that a lot of the families get the information that they need, especially revolving around the pandemic and the different government regulations in the languages that they understand. So we translate all of important notices in our material into the different languages in the FSM.
I've seen those going around, so Suzuz Masi for this work, and it's good to hear that the Department of Interior is doing this, because it's a U.S. treaty relationship that has created this opportunity for people to come here, so they need to make sure that there are programs that assist, in my opinion, both at home in being armed in the proper way of understanding how to come here and how to work within the community, and then for them to also be helping have programs here that are helping all of us deal with, the treaty. Maybe not saying it as well as I'd like to, but with that. And then for Jackie at CAHA, would you like to speak about maybe some of your intergenerational programs or others? Or, Senator Pedo?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we allow Senator Castro to give us some insight?
Sure. I was going to finish this off with CAHA and then move to Senator Will. Is that okay? Yeah. Sorry, it takes a little while to go around in the circle. I apologize.
Thank you, Senator Marsh, Senator Torres, Senator Castro, and Senator Terlaje for giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit. But first, before I start, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Dr. Sauter for going to the NEA many, many years before I started at CAHA to get funds for the organization to actually start. She was the one who went to DC and got us monies first. So I need to acknowledge her for that. And then I'm happy to say that, through our grant program, we have supported Minetlu, Inetnagef Pago, and even Dr. Babwakwa too with some of their projects. And we would like to encourage, for them to continue coming to CAHA for grants, because we see the benefits of the programs that they have in place. So what I can say is for our FY 2021 grant cycle, it's currently open, and the deadline for people to submit grants to CAHA is July 31st. With this pandemic and COVID-19, it's a little difficult, so we are accepting the applications via email, and all of those materials can be found on our website. But I wanted to add that for this particular year, we do support folk arts, media arts, and visual arts, and all the other disciplines. But for this year, because of the pandemic, we added 4 grant lines that will be given several preference points over the other grants. So the first one is Arts in Humanities in the Time of Crisis. And we're soliciting projects from individuals and groups that consider the role and value their particular practice during times of crisis, interpretation of the role of the arts and humanities play in society during challenging times. That's one. The second one is Keeping Your Distance. We're looking for projects from groups and individuals as well who utilize technology such as podcasts, streaming, broadcast mediums, and other vehicles to bring the product of their particular practice to the community while keeping their distance. The third one is Sustaining the Arts. And with all the resources stretched at this time in the community, we want them to practice or do projects that are sustainable. So they can either use recyclable materials or natural resources, or how can they participate in making the economy more sustainable. So this project is open to those types of projects that use or discuss the theme of sustainability in their art forms. And then the last one is Arts and Humanities, Identity and Social Justice. So artists not only document social change, they promote, inform, and shape it, whether through music, plays, graphics, paintings, songs, films, media, architecture, textiles, jewelry, photography, poetry, sculpture, pottery, landscapes, written word, spoken word, or dance, but art is powerful. So art is the intellectual underpinnings of social change. Nowhere is there more potential and more need for the arts than here and now. So artists and their arts can promote social justice, mitigate disparities, bring people together, and build healthy neighborhoods. CAHA's looking for proposals like that. But that's for our FY21 grant cycle. So like I mentioned, it closes, the deadline to submit those applications are July 31st. But we also did receive COVID monies, but we haven't announced it yet. We're trying to get it all set on a grant management software. And that's to benefit those nonprofit organizations and individuals who had projects that were delayed or affected by the pandemic. So we should be putting that hopefully out soon. But I know that I'm not sure if you're able to play the director, Gillette's video, but what she wanted to talk about or bring out was that the National Endowment of the Arts has a grant called Our Town, and it's all about creative placemaking. And she was thinking that maybe this would be an opportunity to bring all these nonprofits together to come up with projects that would benefit specifically underserved community, whether it be the homeless or minorities or the senior citizens, etc. But I know she wanted to touch base. I'm not sure if she's able to sign in, because I know that she had a meeting at 2 and she may still be there. But for us, because we're only a staff, including with the director, there's only a staff of 5. There are so many things we would like to do, but realistically, we know it's impossible. So a lot of our projects are done either through collaborations with GVB, other government entities. But for the most part, what we do is our federal funding that we do get from the National Endowment for the Arts. Half of that normally goes out to the grants that we award to the community. So that's the way we assist these people. I'm not sure what else to say. I'm not really a speaker, but.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that very much. And it's wonderful to see how, I mean, CAHA has been providing for our community for so long. And so we continue to look forward to all the good things that CAHA does. And and just building on that success. And I just got some feedback, maybe someday we'll kind of update some of how we do these, but we have people watching live stream from the States as well, and they've been making some comments. So awesome to our friends and family that are in the States. And thank you so much for your patience, Senator. We love what we care about, and so it's taken a while to get to you. We greatly appreciate your patience in that, but we look forward to your comments and maybe a question that you might have.
Well, half a day, Senator. Thank you. Dispensa lai, Senator Pedo. Huhungo gadzino fanatres na palabra padza appling. Pues no gipineloko sokonawagango lo tilek mono agwagwat. Fanano hamzuno mas hago Senator Pedo mas no omatungo na hutungwa ifinoo. From time to time, I'm also very embarrassed. Palabra hutungwa pues estano hulatsi todo. All right, in all seriousness, I want to thank you. It's really inspiring to listen to a few of you talk about some of the things you're clearly very passionate about. Mr. Gagrin, I appreciate you speaking from the heart and talking about some of the things you do to engage our people. That's awesome. I've met Sam before and had the privilege of contributing and helping her programs with her team, so that's great. Dr. Sauter, I tuned in today particularly to see what kind of nuggets I can pull from this, and I was really happy that almost everyone talked about technology and engagement at all levels. And I want to leave this with the committee chair and the co-chair. Perhaps from a policy perspective, this is something we can do. We can build up from that. I don't know if you remember, we had this Imagine Guam 2065. It was a 50-year outlook. And while most of it, it's a 50-year outlook, and although it was very aspirational, I thought that there were some major flags down the street, down the way in terms of what we can do as a community. I appreciate many of you at least speaking that we should be a lot more bold in terms of speaking the language and taking at the risk of sounding appling or being appling, but as long as we could try. And I guess that's what I want to leave with you, Madam Chair, and I want to work with you on this. And how do we connect? What kind of a policy framework can we set up to support Manyetlu and everyone else who's here on the screen? Mr. Regis, thank you for all you do in terms of the advancement of the arts. I'm a teacher as well, and I'm a parent of 4 children. And I think all of us understand that it's the engagement part. And if there's one thing that COVID brought to my life, it's the opportunity to get together, Sanhizong, as my colleague mentioned, in terms of sitting down and having dinner every night. But what do we do now? There's no turning away from the reality that we live in a hybrid environment. This hybrid learning environment is not going away. As a matter of fact, many educational institutions are moving almost completely online. When just 2 to 5 years ago, it was unheard of that you would supplant human interaction in a brick and mortar with something that really is on a platform like Zoom or any other technology platform. So the challenge becomes for all of us who love our island and our culture and our Marianas and our Micronesia, to reach back out to Mr. Gagrin, is how do we embrace some of this and bring it together so that, as Dr. Sauter was professing to all of us, and I agree, how do we maintain this level of engagement so that we can learn a little more about our culture and put it into practice? Madam Chair, my question, it's probably more rhetorical unless somebody wants to jump in it, is what do you see, if you want to maybe direct it to any of our panelists, as senators or members of Congress or people who make up the Municipal Planning Council can do from a policy perspective to help advance the proliferation of our Chamorro language and culture and our identity? So that would be my question. And I don't expect a full answer, but I'm curious to hear what some of you might say, and maybe we can translate that into something actionable.
Very good comments. And, some of what you were talking about with technology is we have to engage youth with where they're at. And like you're saying with the educational system, we were just seeing in the media today that parents seem to be going 70% of learning distance or learning from home, and technology is probably going to be a big factor in that. And we've seen some of these companies, these young startup companies that are putting together cultural values, cultural knowledge, and technology. And so these can be things that we build on as we go forward. In restructuring the way that we're looking at some of this, some of the opportunities, some of how we engage with all of these entities. But also I just wanted to point out, not that we necessarily would spend a lot of time on it, but just in what we're doing this term is there have been so many changes over the years and over the decades in how to think about this and how to have these art and culture and humanities programs serve the community so that they're nourishing them, they're making that community healthy and whole, so that, again, we're trying to tackle in preventative ways, going down unhealthy paths of drugs and crimes and other things. So some of what we're doing this term is taking those lessons over the years and over the decades to restructure our governmental system so that it is hopefully, that's the goal. I'm not hopefully it's the goal, but it's the goal, and hopefully it will do all the things that we're really working hard at, is to restructure it in a way that it's going to provide these services in even more focused and updated ways to the community. I know Dr. Sauter has been leading up that effort, and she can probably spell it out, I imagine, much better than I can about some of that restructuring. But I think it's important that we as policy makers understand this restructuring, why, what the goal is, how technology can fit in, as you were saying, in various ways, both for providing support, but also in reaching out to our community. So maybe Dr. Sauter, maybe could speak to some of the things that Senator Will was bringing.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'll be very bold. You know, we often talk in the Comisión Finot-Zamoro that we have to be tafo in our old age, because the time has come where you just have to lay it out. There's no more time to waste. And if mañana can be tafo, if Saina can be tafo, then it's perfectly legit. So be tafo pago, okay? But the truth of the matter is that we have to create the infrastructure. We have to create the administrative and the, if you will, the support structure to guide and lead nation building. What we're talking about when we talk about cultural Chamorro revitalization, Chamorro language and culture, sustenance and sustainability is another way of saying we need to be about the business of nation building in a very deliberate, very consistent, and very, very focused way. And so we need to create the infrastructure for that. And that's what we look to the legislature and to the executive branch to do, is help us to create the infrastructure. The governor established a task force, a cultural task force, when she got into office, and we were tasked, I was the chair of the task force, we were tasked with looking at the whole infrastructure of the cultural apparatus on Guam relative to Chamorro language, culture, and history, and make a proposal as to how we could strengthen that structure. And we've submitted that to the governor. We've submitted it to the legislature formally, in the hopes that that will move us forward, because these efforts need to be coordinated, they need to be collaborative, and they need to be sustained in a way that, with funding, but also with will, because with the will of the people, and all of you, the four of you who are here present, have provided tremendous support to that effort, and we count on your support, por favor, as these things come to the floor, because they're going to happen because you made them happen. Hafatapuni, you are the body that can create this infrastructure for us in collaboration with the executive branch. Now, one of the things that the Commission is trying to do, and you'll be very proud of us, and most of us are, with the exception of two people, we're all 70 and over, okay? But we understand that we have to communicate with children. We have to create children speakers, youth speakers, because when we pass on, the baton is going to fall into the hands of those who need to be just as committed to cultural longevity, right? And we assure that our culture continues into the future by continuing to speak our language, because our language is the vehicle, is the umbilical cord of our culture, right? So how do we do that? Well, we're trying to go virtual in many ways. So rather than publishing print, we're creating a platform, a web platform that will support language teaching. You know, folks, some people can't go to the university or GCC to take courses. They're already adult. We have the responsibility to make sure that they have an opportunity to learn and speak. We need to bring in our first language speakers. Esta mangay edad, over 70, 75, 80 years old. They have a way of giving us knowledge that second language speakers of Chamorro do not have access to. So we've got to create opportunities for that synergy to occur. We're trying to do that through our revitalization center. We're trying to make everything Chamorro free, because a lot of people can't buy stuff, but they want to access stuff. So if we can, we're trying to collect everything Chamorro, but we need a Chamorro archive that will be available to our people wherever they are. There are more Chamorros off island than there are Chamorros on island, right? The diaspora is crying for material. They're as legitimately Chamorro as we are. They are our people. We hope they'll come back. But whatever the case, we need to use these virtual platforms. We have begun using Zoom to teach Chamorro. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing what we can do if we just get over our fear of technology, right? So we're asking young technicians to join with us to create these models. We want to do an app in Chamorro so that when you type, you don't have to keep self-correcting. So we try to communicate in Chamorro through our phones. The phone has this insidious desire to correct everything into English. So our lonat, our dolan, our enyi don't show up, and we send each other messages that are like amazingly crazy. So we want to create an app in Chamorro so that you can actually type in a word and it self-corrects in Chamorro, right? We want to make it so, not so easy, because nothing is easy, right? But we want to make it so inviting that people will want to learn in every way that they're comfortable learning. We're supporting Umedzak Chamorro, the umedzakchamorro.com, which is an educational platform, whichever way we can. We can only do this, one, if we have the infrastructure that allows us, that authorizes us to do it. And two, if we have the, honestly, not so big budget that we're asking for. And you might say, Dale, lo que si loling na tinafulo. I told you from the beginning that in these days, you have to resort to all measures. And sometimes you have to just put it out there and hope that I know the 4 of you are listening, but there are 15 of you. And I hope that everybody's queuing in to the fact that we need to support the infrastructure. Lip service doesn't count for nothing. Okay? When people say we support, put your money where your mouth is. That's what's important, honestly. In terms of the legislature, put the law where your mouth is, because that's the support that we need. It's not enough for a parent to say, I love you, and then I kick you. I love you, and then I ignore you. I love you, and then I abuse you. What is that? That's patgun madzuti kind of activity. So let's not make our language and culture and art platform a patgun madzuti in the scheme of government, please. I know I've said enough. Maybe too much.
Jesus Masi, Doctora. And, just to bring to our attention, I'm a little rusty off the top of my head with where our budget percentages are at. So maybe somebody has them more on top of their head than me, but I did notice, like last year, that the arts and the culture, all of those entities combined get less than 1%. And so, when you were speaking about the health of the mind and the health of the spirit and the health of the body, and, we see the others, education and public safety and health, they're much larger percentages, 30% or so. And so I think these discussions are really important, that we can see that perhaps if we, when and can and how we can, maybe even if it's just helping leverage those federal monies with our matching share, that we are solving some answers. We are creating health for our community. We are actually helping address some of those health and safety concerns through the arts. In fact, I even was thinking about, well, what if we relabel that section and we call it something more along the lines of what we see the military doing. It's morale and welfare, right? Where we understand it to be these recreational activities in one speak or cultural activities in another speak, that it's really about the morale of the community. It's about the welfare of the community. It's about these bigger issues. So if anybody, I know we have a lot of great minds here, if anybody thinks that's an important thing to do to help us understand the role it really plays, and therefore maybe understand that it has value in being supported for the benefit of our community, not to rob something from anything else, but maybe as a multi-pronged approach to also tackle health in this way, to also tackle public safety in other ways. But that's probably a whole nother series of roundtables to be thinking about that. But hopefully this chips away at some of those kind of issues. Is there somebody else? We really appreciate Senator Will's comments and some of his questions. Vince, did you have some input?
Okay. First, I want to say Donklo na Jesus Masi for all your support with the Tourist Attraction Fund. When you're talking about policy and you're talking about real world or giving us the opportunity through the Tourist Attraction Fund, you were able to give us an amount, and I'll tell you right now, that is what's saving us right now. When COVID hit, we were running 5 shows a week at Sheraton. We were the only full Chamorro dinner show. We weren't doing Polynesian at all. So what started out as a 1-day show, a 2-day show, we went to 5 days a week. We were at Outrigger doing weekly shows over there. We were starting to talk to Subaki. We were starting to starting to talk with other hotels to promote more Chamorro culture. When COVID hit, everything stopped. That money, so with Tourist Attraction Fund, when we received, it came at the right time. We received the allotment right after we ran out of funds. So for us, it saved us as far as at least for the next couple months. Then that allowed us to go in and apply for the Guam Humanities CARES grant. Then we're hoping to go back in for CAHA grants or whatever other opportunities there were. But I think at a policy level, first, I think what we need to do is find out, why are we doing this? Why does it matter? Like, why does it matter? What are we doing? What are we trying to do? And I know with me, COVID has made me rethink or at least reflect on, what am I trying to do? Why am I the only one staying up late, worried about whether or not our kids have a culture? And why do I break down the whys? Why does it matter to me? Why does it matter to Alex? Why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to my mom all the way in Arizona? Why? Then when I get to that source, because it just does, then I can find the passion within me and the policy, and then the direction. art, what I try to do again is to bridge the gap. And I think as policy and with everyone in the legislature, I'm so grateful that that everybody believes in what we do. But how do we use art as the medium to bridge that gap? How do we use art to make it easy for our kids and my brothers and sisters to speak the language? How do we use art to empower us so that we can carry our culture forward and to be able to have, what are we trying to do with language? What we want everyone to speak 100% fluently. We want people to dream of that. When we get to that, then we can kind of create policy and a policy that will help guide that. But I think what's important now is the big question: why do we do what we do, and why does it matter? And why does it matter to me? Because why does it matter to you? And how? And then once we figure that out, then we drive forward. Because we're all doing many great things, and there's so many cultural practitioners that are doing amazing work. And I am just the crazy one that just wants to travel and go to 27 countries, you know? And not everybody thinks like me, and especially our kids. You know, a lot of them, they don't believe that they can do it, and they don't believe that they can dream. But I always believe you dream big, then you keep your foot in the ground, but you dream big, and you dream and dare to dream big. And so what are we trying to do? I think that's my message, is what do we want for our people, and what is the big why that will push us through? Once we clarify that, then we can find that policy, then we can find that program, then we can support the tourist attraction funds. I don't know, because if we even have, because tourists, I don't think there's any money, right? I mean, I don't know, because there's no tourists. But the fact that we're able to get something, you've helped 16 dancers who was relying on that money so that to help them to, now we're able to, now I take that money, I divert it, now we're going to put a mural on, or we're able to do a video, or we're able to do something. We shifted it. Right now we're not able to do performances, but we're able to now be able to breathe a little bit so that we can figure out what the next best thing is for our culture. I don't have the answers right now. There's no answers. And I think being fluid and flexible and honest about where we're at is what's important. So that's me. Thank you.
Well, and Maasi, that we have you, you know, I wish it wasn't the sleepiness slides. I get you on that, but that we have those of us with those sleepless nights worrying. And Doctora?
You know, Vince, the big why is continuity of peoplehood. Our ancestors, through 150 generations, have given life to what we know now as being Chamorro, speaking Chamorro, being an indigenous people of this homeland, right? And so it's in our hands, our generations combined, it's in our hands to determine whether we move that agenda of our ancestors forward, or whether we become the generations that snipped it, right? That discontinued what has been ongoing for 150 generations. Each generation reinventing itself, because we're not the same as the folks who first came here and set foot about 4,000 years ago. But we are their descendants, and they transmitted to us a way of life, an ethos, and the greatest gift they've given us is our language. And we have a responsibility to make a decision in our generations, because I know you and I don't belong to the same generation, but collectively we live now, right? And so those of us who are here now have to decide what we're going to do with that inheritance. Do we treasure and move it forward, or para tazuti, you know? And that's the why. And that's why your mom, even though she's in Arizona, is worrying about this. And that's why we are worrying about it. And that's why people in Washington, D.C. have to worry about it. And that's why, you know, So the why is much bigger than any one of us, right? But it embraces all of us, and it's part of our well-being. It's part of our, but it's also part of our nation building, because we are nation builders. Whether we choose to build a nation or not is to be determined by our action. But we are fundamentally, we have inherited a nation. Do we throw it to the wind, or do we give it to the next generations? That's the why.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And when I think of what is it that I worry about the most, I worry about that that God has given me this blessing to be able to do what I do and to impact these kids. And I worry that I'm not giving them enough. I worry that much, the transfer of knowledge. And I worry if I am getting enough. I am getting enough from the elders. I'm getting enough wisdom. I'm getting enough understanding of our culture. And I am able to transfer that knowledge to the people that I am around. And so for me, when I create that why, and that's what I mean. I mean, yes, we all know that, of course, our identity is very valid and very important. But for myself, as my why, if I look at that, then I'm able to drive my agenda forward. So my whys is I need to make sure and ensure that transfer of knowledge passes on from my mom to me, to those kids and every single person that I speak to. And how do I do it? Then I start thinking, we'll create this dance, and maybe we'll do a rice dance. Maybe we'll do a dance on shrimp patties. So I don't know, whatever it is that we need to do, right? Or maybe we create YouTube videos that talk about these things and we did a Sengwaiza Hagwan conference where I had youth talking to youth about Chamorro culture. And that and I was the manamko there, I had to shut my mouth and listen. And that was an amazing thing because it empowered our kids to talk to each other about their identity. And why we did that was because I wanted to listen to them. That was my why. And that's why I go back to this, is that what I go back to, so that when we create the policy, we're clear of what why is and why we do what we do, or at least why we're driving this effort or particular part of our work. Why do we do what we do? So I definitely agree with you, and I'd love to learn more from you, and I'd love to be able to sit and pick your brain and just know that I want to learn so that I can then transfer and share that knowledge with everyone that's in my world. So Jesus Masi for that. I could go on and on. I could preach and preach, but I know this is not the word according to Vince Regis, so I'm going to shut up now.
But it is really good discussion, and we have to hash these things out in order to have direction, in order to do the things that need to be done to make those differences. So maybe the last thing that I would have out there as a question. And I do think some of what you were talking about, Vince, it gets back to the infrastructure. Like, I think that's been a really good direction that we're going in, is along with the rest of much of the world in the way that they're looking at indigenous cultural art and community issues, that we're updating. We're updating ourselves to reflect a lot of what's been learned and is being practiced out there. So it's good for us as policymakers to know that this is going on so that we know how to support it, what its goal is, what the whys are. Excuse me. And continue to go from there. So one of the things, and I don't know if this is going to fit in, but I think it's important for us to think about is one of the things I shared with Dr. Sauter is that in this restructuring, if there's an ability to have an arm of it, maybe DCA or maybe part of the Commission if tomorrow itself, but to call everybody together from Manyetlu to the dance groups, to whoever is out there as a cultural entity and an art and humanities entity, and to call them together twice a year, maybe once as a workshop and once as a forum, so that there is, everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what they're doing, and it really builds on the infrastructure that Doctora and others have been working really hard on. I don't know if that's the right way to go, but I think it could help weave things together so that we also then have direction on how to best support the government structure and the programs that are out there. But the last question, if maybe we can talk about it quickly, I know we've been here a while, is what examples are we seeing out there are something that is gonna help what we're trying to do as leaders and what you're trying to do at the community level? Are there things like successful programs that are happening in New Zealand, perhaps, or elsewhere with First Nations in Hawaii? Does anybody have an example of some things that we might be striving towards as a government or as programs? Why? I'm not sure. Did anybody have their hand raised?
I'll share some of what I've seen and done research about Hawaii. I mean, since we are part of the American Empire, whether we want to be or not, I mean, and there are various ranges of commitment to that. But as we are part of it, I think it's a good idea for us to look at what's happening with Native Americans within that structure, right? So the First Nation peoples in the US, and particularly the US and Canada, are doing some very, very forward-thinking things about how to make sure that culture has primacy. And Hawaii, the Native Hawaiians are also doing a lot. And in the context of sovereignty, I've talked a little bit about this and written a little bit about it, but I distinguish in my mind between cultural sovereignty and political sovereignty. We know that the question of political sovereignty is a hot lemai that gets thrown from one lap to another, right? But the idea of cultural sovereignty is something I think we need to explore more, because we can exercise cultural sovereignty if we are of a collective mind in terms of nation building, in terms of decolonizing, and if we engage in these acts deliberately together as community. The decision makers as well as the general community, then I think that we're moving in the direction that we want to. And I know that Native Hawaiians have often talked about cultural sovereignty separate from political sovereignty. Our political sovereignty has been compromised, but we don't ever have to give up our cultural sovereignty. And engaging in deliberate acts of sovereignty that protect our language and our cultural ways of being, I think is one way of exercising that. So I've been inspired by, for example, the incredible work that First Nation peoples are doing. And even just to start considering ourselves as First Nation peoples. It's changing our minds about who we are. We are American citizens. That relates to our political identity. But there are American citizens who are also Native Hawaiians, sovereign Hawaiians, who are also First Peoples across the United States, who have negotiated arrangements with the United States. So I think if we begin to change our minds about who we are and relocate our discourse when we talk about these things, then we're not moved by what the grantors say who we should be, right? It used to be that we'll do whatever it is that the grant says we can do so that we can get the money. And I think we need to move away from that paradigm because it's very injurious to our spirit. We become lackeys, we become extensions of someone else's agenda. So what the Comisión Infinito is trying to do as part of our vision, Tinanga, is that we are committed to leading nation building in relation to language, culture, and history. But we can't do it alone, and we can't do it in isolation of everything else. So Senator Kelly, when you shared with us the idea of networking, we incorporated that immediately into our strategic plan to create a network, and we're trying to do it little by little. We started with the government agencies, and now we're moving out and including, public and private partnerships. And we're hopeful that this next year we'll be able to open that network up to include all of the cultural entities, of which you, Vince, and Samantha and Alejandro represent, so that we can talk together, because there's power in numbers. We know that. And we've operated kind of like scavengers, going out for the same crumbs. And that kind of environment is detrimental to us. It's competitive, it's cutthroat, and we have to, get the competitor out of the way. And that's not going to help us. It's like, when Nana used to talk to us about the crabs in the bucket, no crab comes out without losing an arm or a leg or a whatever, even if some of them make it out of the bucket. So why don't we just change the paradigm? That's part of what nation building is all about. So I think these conversations are so critical for that purpose, because you know what? Young people have great ideas. They can teach us so much about how to rethink and relook at things. I listen to my grandchildren all the time. They're my favorite and best teachers, and they teach me an amazing amount of knowledge about technology, but they also teach me about how to think differently. That's old, Nana. That won't work anymore. We're in the 21st century, and I keep asking them, okay, so what does that mean? Help me operationalize that. And I take it seriously. We all have to. But young people can learn from us too, So thank you, Vince, for saying that you want to listen to us, because we have a lot to share, because our experience is still grounded in that what is now called Old Chamorro Way, which is really a very young part of our extended 4,000-year culture, but it's experiential, and we know how to gut a deer. We know how to kill a chicken. Believe it or not, I do too. My grandchildren were freaked out when they learned that I cleaned a deer when I was 12 years old. And I was giving them tips. So the thing is that we have a lot to learn from each other. And this intergenerational collaboration can work at many layers. It's not just, Nana, teach me how to make, golayapan. No, because there's all kinds of golayapan in our experience that we have to learn from each other. Sorry, once you get me started, I can hardly stop.
Yes, well, I'd love for this to be a weekly gathering, but it's probably not going to be able to happen. But did anybody have any final thoughts? Maybe Senator Pedo or Senator Mary or Senator Will or any of the others that are here? We do have that video we're going to try one more time, but let's see, Samantha.
Yes. So real quick, I was just kind of looking at the flyer again for this, saying the role of art, culture, and the humanities in the community empowerment to tackle crime, drug abuse, and other problems. And Thinking about the population that we typically work with, which are typically from the FSM, I was part of the Green Growth Program that they had at UOG, kind of looking at the UN Sustainable Goals, and my group was working on equality for all. And one of the things that we really talked about and kind of identified was just sort of when you look at public safety and you look at DYA and you look at DOC, there's a disproportionate amount of Chukis and other islanders that are there. And we kind of diving into that issue. And what we had kind of talked about was that there is a lack of education about the different cultures that we now share this island with. You know, you can be sitting next to somebody in class and they're Chukis and you don't know anything about them, and it can kind of start to create, if you don't understand somebody and understand the reason why they're doing certain things, it kind of can create barriers between you. And, we see that a lot of times in elementary school, kids don't see color, kids don't see race, but as they kind of get older, they start to kind of pick up these sort of bad habits. And, so one of the things that I kind of also, just want to throw into the mix is just, we also need to realize that, it's not just Chamorros here anymore. There's a lot of different cultures here, and being inclusive and kind of helping other kids understand those other cultures. And then also you have to remember some of those kids are now born on Guam and now they're disconnected from their culture as well. And I don't know exactly where this sort of education would take place, but also just kind of including them as well, because we are seeing that a lot of the crime and drug abuse and some of these other problems are coming from those who from our neighboring islands. And how do we support them? And is it kind of educating them at a younger age about their culture, educating everyone sort of about the different cultures as well? So that's just something I wanted to input.
Just Masi for that. There are a lot of really important concepts in what you were saying. With our neighboring islanders who are now here, some of whom were born here, some of whom are second, third generation, they are also feeling some of that disconnect, as you were saying, from their home islands and their culture. And so there's this concept I learned a really long time ago, and maybe it's something that could help guide us, but it's this nested identities, right? And if we take that to history, the way that I taught history, it's sort of this nested way of looking at history. If at the base of it all, we understand that it's an indigenous homeland, then we understand that that's at the base of it all, and then how we all fit in at that next layer up. Where we can give each other, I guess maybe in the Sustainable Development Goals, they talk about equality, but what's really been a big difference for me is to look at giving people lives of dignity. And for me, that was really a game changer. Equality has its positives, of course, but equality, it doesn't address a lot of things. And giving them that life of dignity, it can perhaps, in the way that I think about it, or it could be as a concept where recognizing that Chamorros are indigenous and recognizing that Chukis are indigenous in their islands as well, and deserve to be treated with dignity for that indigeneity and some of their story. And as I was saying earlier, how really a lot of this can be about finding those commonalities in the Chamorro language classes and the Chamorro cultural classes. It's about knowing that, and I saw that happen with Pohnpeian and Marshallese students. They loved the chanting that they were doing, and finding out those areas that they have shared together, and how, I'm trying to figure out
I agree.
a way that makes sense for this forum, but It's also this concept of looking at it kind of as this mosaic, but not in a mosaic where it erases the indigenous. The indigenous still has to be there at that rounded level. But the mosaic is about, instead of melting pot where we all become one different thing altogether, it's about recognizing how we're a beautiful community here together. How Guam is one that my parents chose to live in because of all the special characteristics. And I think that's why a lot of people are here, whether they're Pohnpeian or Marshallese or Chukis, or, I mean, we have people from Nepal and from Bangladesh and from, so, you know, almost I feel like 193 recognized countries. And there are reasons why they choose being here. And I think we make a beautiful mosaic here all together with that understanding of that, you know, beneath it all is 4,000 years of history and in indigeneity. So yes, those are important, and they do get back to some of the policy actually, because people have asked, well, how do we tackle some of these things at the policy level? And you know, I don't know that it needs to be written into law, but maybe that's a way to secure it, is ways of making sure that certain curriculum is in place. I think this had to happen for Guam history. When Dr. Sauter was growing up, when I was growing up, when Senator Pedo was growing up, we didn't have Guam history. It either wasn't provided or it wasn't elective. And it was really important to make sure we had that in our curriculum. And so people have said the same about our regional history. Let's know who we are as a region, how we all connect with each other, so that along with understanding Guam history, it's our regional history. So that might be something that we look at, either in just having conversations with GDOE, or whether it's something that actually would need to be in policy.
Yes, I like how you put it. It's about finding those commonalities. You know, it's yes, recognizing that this is Guahan, this is you know, Chamorro land, but kind of realizing the regional history and how we're still connected, although we are different.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I'm looking forward to as we go on. I've said, I don't think I've seen a Micronesian food truck yet, but I think it would be wonderful to add to our repertoire, right? We love all these different foods, but I'm getting a little off topic that way. So was there anything else before we're going to give Gillette's video another try? Was there anything anybody wanted to mention before we go ahead and try the video? Okay, so let's go ahead and try the video, and then we can do our last comments, if any, and then close out today, which has been a great day for me. I've gained a lot from it. It's reset me in a lot of ways, and in thinking about how to move forward with the work that we do in the legislature. So Vic, if you could go ahead and try the video again.
Do so. Good afternoon. My name is Gillette Leon Guerrero, and I'm the acting director of CAHA. Thank you for allowing me to participate. I wanted to be here, but had a conflict that would not allow me to do so. Many think that the arts and humanities are frivolous and sometimes easily dismissed as non-essential. The fact of the matter is the arts and humanities are extremely important to society. Think about how do we know about societies that have been long gone, and how do we know about their existence? How do we know about their culture? What is left behind? How do we know what was important to them? We know about long gone societies through the arts and humanities. If we are lucky, we find remnants of artwork, architecture, designs on and of material culture. And if there are none of these tangible items, there can be traditions and practices that have been passed down: dance, song, chants, myths, stories. And these things tell us what was important to their society, and they give us a glimpse into their lives and tell us how they identified themselves. The arts and humanities are the vehicles that we use to express our humanity, our identity, our culture and traditions. When we are long gone, it will be our stories, songs, dances, literature, architecture, and art that will tell our descendants about our society and times. The themes that are played out many times are universal: love, hate, justice or lack thereof, freedom, equality, community, isolation, and so on. The expression of these themes have the ability to bring about diverse groups of people together, and in some cases can bring light to injustice and social inequalities. And in this way, can help to heal those who are on the fringe of society, or remedy injustice, and at the very least, provide a place to belong. Creative expression has the ability to fill the soul and can help individuals who have difficulty expressing themselves. The arts can also trigger emotional connections like music, a good film, or a theatrical performance. There are many studies of the benefits of the arts and humanities in therapeutic settings for individuals, but what I wanted to talk about is the ability to reinvigorate places that have been abandoned or forgotten. This is something that really interests me. The National Endowment for the Arts has an artistic field called creative placemaking. They have a program called Our Town. This program helps to transform communities into lively, beautiful, and resilient places with arts as their core. Through this program, artists and art organizations and community development practitioners invigorate arts and culture into the community revitalization work. Creative placemaking supports local efforts to enhance quality of life and opportunity for existing residents. It helps increase creative activity and create a distinct sense of place. I was thinking that this would be something to investigate in reference to our homeless population. What about our at-risk children, our Manumco, or other underserved communities? What a wonderful idea toward making serious social change in underserved communities, to reinvigorate the places where these people frequent. Projects must integrate arts, culture, and design activities into efforts to strengthen communities by advancing economic, physical, and/or social outcomes. These projects must include a nonprofit organization and a government entity. The objective of the program is stated as strengthening communities, providing opportunities for the arts to be integrated into the fabric of community life. The Our Town project outcomes may include economic change, which is economic improvements of individuals, institutions, or the community, including local business growth, job creation, labor force participation, professional development training, prevention of displacement in migration, and tourism. Physical change would be physical improvements that occur to the built and natural environment, including beautification and/or enhancements of physical environment, new construction and redevelopment, including arts, culture, and public space. Social change, social improvements to social relationships, civic engagement, and community empowerment, and/or amplifying community identity, including civic engagement, collective efficacy, social capital, social cohesion, and community attachment. And the last one is systems change, improvements to community capacity to sustain the integration of arts, culture, and design into strategies for advancing local economic, physical, and or social outcomes, including, for example, establishment of new and lasting cross-sector partnerships, shifts in institutional structure, practices or policies, replication of or scaling of innovative project models, establishment of training programs, or dissemination of information resources to support the creative placemaking field. You can find out more information about this program at www.arts.gov/artistic-fields/creative placemaking. They have a wonderful collection of Our Town projects that have been created in places across the country. I think this might be a good opportunity for Guam. And as I thought about it, I initially thought about the Plaza de España, but when this invitation came and I thought about it, I thought, why not use something like this to help some of our underserved communities that we are struggling with trying to come up with a solution for them. Thank you for allowing me to be here again, and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.
So I'm glad we got that to be able to work. And really, there are so many ways that we can use the arts and humanities and cultural programs to have direct action, and these direct programs that address really big issues in the community. I only know how to think about it in smaller ways, but some of the conversations that Gillette and I have had are about some of the programs that I've seen where we can work with artists to create sculptures, and those sculptures are very beautiful trash cans. And they encourage people to throw that trash the heck away where it belongs, you know? And so one of the things that we looked at was in other places, they get artists to develop these large fish sculptures with have a mouth. And the kids, I'm assuming adults too, I guess I'd like to do it, you know, but it encourages them to throw things into the trash because they've made an activity out of it. The fish is beautiful. The artists have been given a job. It's beautifying the beach. Like it's just connecting all sorts of things, but it can directly benefit us in so many ways, maybe attack our littering problem in some ways, help provide jobs for our community, add to the types of business opportunities that our locals can have, just a variety of things like that. But Senator Pedo, Senator, did you want to give a closing remark before we close out for today? And I just want to say for myself, I appreciate everybody so much. Senator, did you want to give a closing remark? You're on mute though. Can you have somebody unmute you? Vic, are you able to?
I'm definitely trying.
Okay, it might need to be on his end.
There.
Okay.
I'm trying and trying.
He's still muted, but like I said, I definitely appreciate everybody being here. So I'll just announce some of the roundtables that are coming up. For the next roundtable, we have, I believe we're going to be having some people within the public safety professions are going to be coming here, maybe DOC, maybe DYA, and we'll be hearing from them.
Senator Marsh, I'm on mute already.
Oh, there, okay, great. Go ahead and give your closing remark.
I just want to thank all the panel for such a wonderful and actually complete information on just what we need to move forward on this one. And I want to thank, I don't know, Laura was with me at San Francisco, and I think I'm older than Laura, but, you know, we're just about there to, you know, just give our input, whatever we can do best. And I want to thank everybody for sharing this wonderful moment with all of us. And hopefully, Senator, we can continue this type of interaction, and we can learn more on just how to move forward. Earlier, I talked about my experiences with the drug enforcement, and you know, one of the subject matter that you indicated on your invitation was about the drugs, the use of drugs and things like that. So maybe if we meet later on in time, I can just mention some of the things that that I'm instituting with the Department of Correction, in as far as kind of just invigorating the things that we need to do to stop this this evil that's coming to our island. Thank you very much.
Just Masi, Senator. And yes, that gets us into that third roundtable where we're going to be able to talk with those public safety professionals. And then for the fourth roundtable, we'll perhaps be able to gather together some of the non-governmental agencies or organizations, I should say, and nonprofit organizations that are working in the community, because it's taking much more than the government to tackle these kind of issues, it's taking a lot of others as well, what their perspectives are, and what they are finding as successful, and maybe even in environmental science, because the environment also feeds into the health and well-being of our community in a variety of ways. So with this, the joint committees will accept written testimonies and comments on today's joint informational roundtable for the next few days. Please address your written testimony specifically to the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination and Regional Affairs, or the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure and Public Transit, and submit it to office.senatorkelly@guamlegislature.org. My office is located on the second floor of the Guam Congress Building, 163 Talan Santo Papa, Hagåtña, Guam, 96910. Sedzuz Maasi for your attendance and participation in today's virtual joint informational roundtable. The time is 4:52. Have a good rest of your day. Have a great weekend.